Alright, so now we've looked through the scene files. Now let's take a look at the system setup functions. So next we have our system setup menu. And the system setup menu is used to set up the camera system. This is where you're going to select your shooting modes and some of your different functions inside the camera, but these are all settings that you would use before you start a shoot. This is where you get prepped for your shoot and make sure that you've got the right settings set up so when you get in there, you can just go to work. So let's take a look. In the System Setup menu, again, you'll see the title of the menu right at the top, and the first option that we have is our System Mode. One of the great features of this camera is its versatility, and that's demonstrated in the System Mode menu. We have the ability to set 60i and 50i in the 1080 modes, as well as 720, 60p, and 50p, not to mention standard definition PAL and NTSC formats in progressive and interlaced. There is a whole host of shooting options all in a single camera now. So instead of having to look for European cameras if you have to travel overseas, you can know that this one camera will take care of you no matter where you are in the world. Now let's take a look at what I'm talking about. Now the system mode allows us to change between several different shooting formats that we talked about, the great versatility of this camera, and this is where we can really see it. We have the 1080, 60i, and 50i, and the 720, 60p, and 50p, as well as the 480, 60i, and the 576, 50i. Generally, I'll just leave this in the 1080, 60i mode, but let's go ahead and see what happens when we change it down to a standard definition mode. We'll have to turn the camera off and back on, and you'll see how this goes. Whenever you're changing from 1080 to 720 or to standard definition, our options are to say yes or no once we've selected the change. And you cannot press the menu button to return. You actually have to select yes or no. So we're going to go ahead and say yes. And once we select that, it's going to say System Mode Processing and completed. And then we're going to need to turn the camera off and back on. And it tells us right there you need to turn it off. So we'll turn it off and back on. Once we've turned it back on here, we can go into our menu, but you can see that we're now shooting in 480i DVC Pro 50. Once we're in the system setup again, now we have the option under Record Signal to change between camera and 1394. And you will see a flicker in your screen when you change this, just like that. We're going to go ahead and leave it on camera, and below that we have a record format setting. Now there are certain options that are only available in standard definition recording, like the DVC Pro 50, the DVC Pro, and the DV. These are just the different options here, and they're all in 60i. Below that you can change your camera mode, and this is where you will want to access it to change between a 60i, a 30p, a 24p, and a 24PA, which is reminiscent of anybody who may have used a DVX camera in the past or some of the other standard definition Panasonic cameras. So now we're just going to go ahead and jump out of the record format settings, and in here you're actually going to note there's one more thing that was in blue previously and is now accessible, and that's the aspect conversion. This is another function that's only available when you're shooting in a standard definition format. The aspect conversion will allow you to either squeeze your pixels, letterbox your pixels, or side crop your pixels. And we can see here how this is working. I usually use squeeze because that means that it's going to display nicely on a 16:9 TV, and those are quite common now. So let's go ahead and jump back here, go back up to our system mode, and get back into our 1080 60i format. Once we select it, we need to go up and say yes. We can either push right or press in the joystick. It's going to change the system mode, and once that's complete, we're going to want to turn the camera off and back on again. This camera is fairly quick at turning off and back on. Remember, you don't have to wait for it to turn all the way off before you put your switch back to the on mode. You can just simply turn it off and back on and let the camera start rebooting itself. Let's jump back into the menus here and run down to our system setup again. And since we've already gone over the record signal, we're going to go to the record format. And now that we're in high definition, we have different options available. Now the recording format is another menu option that shows us the versatility of this camera. We can shoot in AVCI 10-bit, 422, 100 megabit per second recording formats, as well as AVCI 50 megabit, 420, 8-bit recording formats. and in DVC Pro HD and DVC Pro. This camera can shoot in high definition, it can shoot in standard definition, and it can shoot in varying formats, but the real power of the AVCI format is that in the 100 megabit, 422, 10-bit recording format, we're getting a greater amount of information that can be stored in every pixel. It means that in post-production, we can push our pixels around a little bit more than we can with the 8-bit and the lower color sampling, and it also can help with the green screen work that you may be doing.